So I thought that I'd start off with a little joke that I found on the internet. What's the difference between stress, tension, and panic? Any ideas? Yeah, it's a good idea, but it's a joke. So stress is when your wife is pregnant. Tension is when your girlfriend is pregnant. And panic is when both are pregnant. But believe it or not, homeopathy can help with all of those situations. Stress, panic, and tension. And as a matter of fact, I have attended 2 births now in my homeopathic capacity, so we can help with all kinds of things, and we're going to get into that. All right, did anybody come with a burning question that they're hoping to get answered tonight? Because I want to make sure that that does happen. So. Excellent question. Terry just asked the difference between homeopathy and naturopathy, and I'm absolutely going to cover that. So we will get there. Any other burning questions that we want to make sure get answered tonight? Yeah? Ooh. All right, we can, let me write that down. So that was, and I don't see your name tag. Suzanne asked about the HCG weight loss, so I'll write that down as a little note. And now my fingers are slippery. And we'll hopefully get a little bit of time for that. Okay. Oh, and one more? Yes, my husband. Okay. So Linda's question is her husband's going through chemotherapy. God bless him. God bless you. Good. Okay, great. But she feels like his immune system is being compromised, as it will be from chemotherapy, and the cross doesn't want him to do anything to build his immune system up, so she's wondering if there's anything that can be done that won't interfere with that. And yes, homeopathy is the answer to that, absolutely. Is there insurance? Is there any kind of insurance? Because sometimes insurance won't cover medical treatments if they find out that you're doing some other things, so that can be a bit of an issue, yeah. Definitely homeopathy won't interfere, which is beautiful. And there's no way for them to trace it either, so that's kind of nice. So we didn't have this conversation, right? We did not speak of this. Okay, so let's see how many people besides Terry do think they have an idea what the difference between homeopathy and naturopathy is. Anybody? Go ahead, yeah. Dilution, exactly. Yeah, you've nailed it perfectly. Nice. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Nadine. Yeah, so Nadine said that she feels that homeopathy is more tinctures and dilutions is the magic word. She got that right. And homeopathy is going to be more, what did you say? More like substances and herbs and things like that, right? Yeah, okay, so absolutely. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So naturopathy is going to be very similar to your medical doctor. And as a matter of fact, in Alberta now, let's see, I looked it up, on August 1st, 2012, Alberta became the 5th province to regulate the practice of naturopathic medicine under Alberta's Health Professional Act. Initially, naturopathic doctors will not have prescribing authority. I don't know that that's changed yet, but will maintain access to IV substances and have been awarded a number of other controlled acts. So, I knew that was coming. So good. Thanks. Good information, Terry. And yeah, they can absolutely order tests and blood work and that kind of thing. So that does set them apart from what I do with homeopathy. And just like the gal over there said, in naturopathy, they do use crude substances. So how they're similar to seeing your medical doctor is that, for instance, if your medical doctor, you go see him because you have inflammation in your leg, he would give you an anti-inflammatory, right? Or maybe something like ibuprofen or Tylenol or something like that. So this is what we call the law of opposites. So naturopathy and your medical doctor work in the law of opposites, meaning if you have inflammation in your knee, you take your anti-inflammatory and it does suppress it. It does make it better for a while. But if you stop taking your anti-inflammatory, then it comes back. So it's not curative. The law of opposites is not a curative law, but a suppressive law or palliative. Now, with homeopathy, what we do actually is we give you something that would cause this problem. Okay, so a really good example of that would be arsenic, which is very poisonous. It's a heavy metal. And if people get too much of it, a big dose of arsenic, they're going to get sick. They're going to get stomach cramps. They're going to get diarrhea. They may get some chills, vomiting, right? So if somebody comes to see a homeopath and has all of those symptoms, guess what I give them? Exactly. We call it arsenicum, but it's a highly diluted dose of it. And so when you've already got the symptoms, if I gave you crude arsenic, I might kill you, make you very sick. But if I give you a very diluted dose of it, then it makes those symptoms go away. And you stop taking it, and the symptoms are gone. So different again from the law of opposites, where if you stop taking it, your symptoms come back. Okay? Is that kind of clear for you, Terry? Yeah? Okay, good. So homeopathy is kind of a funny word. I was at a breakfast meeting not too long ago, and they introduced me and got kind of stuck on homo. So people do like to make fun of it, and as if it's some sort of sexual orientation, some kind of big joke thing, but it's not a joke. As a matter of fact, did any of you in this room know that the Queen of England herself, in fact, has her own homeopath? You knew that? Well, you guys don't count because they know me. But he actually wrote the foreword to this book. And what's interesting about that is it's actually been since 1835 that the English royal family has employed their own homeopathic physicians. Yeah, this is a wonderful book, by the way. It's called The Homeopathic Revolution. I did not, because I don't want to get rid of it. I thought, yeah, I didn't. What was I thinking? We didn't spend enough preparing for this, honey. That's my butler back there, by the way. He loves it when you call him that. Dana Ullman is the author, if you're interested in this book. And it's a fascinating read because it does give you the history of homeopathy. And it also spills the beans about many famous people who have actually been really, really helped by homeopathic medicines. Okay, so, I don't know what that was doing up there. Okay, so yes, in fact, homeopathy was the leading system of medicine worldwide until approximately 1855, and that's when the American Medical Association was really getting its power. It's a very powerful union on this planet today, probably the most powerful. Yeah, I see you nodding your heads. And they decided that they needed to get rid of homeopathy. And it's really interesting because if you look up the minutes of those original meetings of the AMA, they actually say in there, we don't have issue with the principles of homeopathy. We have a problem with them taking all the business. And what's interesting about that is, you know how they sort of convince us to get our vaccinations for the flu, right? And they scare us about the great flu, they call it. Anything that was big and bad is the great one, right? So the great flu of, what was it, 1930, right? The great flu, was it 1830? Thank you. What? Yes, 1918 from the Butler. Thank you, Butler. So that one was very interesting for the fact that there were still quite a few homeopathic hospitals at that time. And what they don't tell you when they're telling you to get your flu shots is that those homeopathic hospitals had a 70% cure rate for that flu. The regular hospitals had a 30% cure rate. So it's pretty interesting, right? But it was Rockefeller at that time who actually started the AMA, so a big oil family. And he was not a medical doctor. And he was the one who decided that homeopathy needed to be stamped out. And so unfortunately, a lot of that sort of misinformation has stayed with us, and we tend to be thought of as quacks and charlatans, and how can something that's got nothing in it do anything at all, right? Okay, so why did the AMA want to get rid of homeopathy, you ask? Well, I think we covered that, right? Because they were taking all of the business. So let's talk about what homeopathy actually means. Again, homeo is Greek for same. Homeo equals same. Pathy, Greek for suffering. So now when you think about what I was talking about a few minutes ago with the arsenic and the arsenicum, you can understand why they would put those two words together for homeopathy, right? Like cures like, that's the law of similars, a curative law. Make sense? All right, so the law of similars has actually been known for a very long time. In fact, even during Hippocrates' time, they knew about the law of similars. But the problem was they didn't know how to apply it. What happened back then was if they gave somebody something, one of three things happened. They'd either get better, or they'd get worse, or they'd die. It was that simple. And in fact, back then, our modern medical system was in its infancy. So they were doing a lot of giving people stuff just to find out what would happen. And many of those things that they gave back then have become some of our most famous drugs. Vitalis is one example of that. But they really didn't know. And this, in fact, is why Samuel Hahnemann decided to renounce his medical practice, because originally he was a medical doctor as well. So the law of similars had been known for a long time, but nobody knew how to apply it, so they'd kind of stay away from it until good old Uncle Sam came along. I like to call him Uncle Sam. His name is Samuel Hahnemann, and he's the father of homeopathy, and he's probably rolling in his grave, shaking his finger at me for calling him Uncle Sam, but you're never going to forget the name of the guy who created homeopathy now, right? What's his name? Sam. Uncle Sam, yeah. Samuel Hahnemann, absolutely. And as I said, he was a medical doctor back then, but a man with an incredible amount of integrity. And he just finally said, I can't do this anymore. I took an oath to do no harm. And when I give these substances to people, one of three things happens, and I can't watch it anymore. So he renounced his medical practice. But he was a brilliant man, and he had a big family to feed already at the age of 24. And so he became a translator. And he spoke 7 or 8 different languages. So he was busy translating the medical textbooks for all of these other physicians as they were giving people stuff and finding out what it did to them. And one fellow said, well, if somebody has a malarial fever, give them quinine, and quinine will quiet it because it's bitter. And Sam thought to himself, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of substances that are bitter that don't quiet a malarial fever, so why does this? And he thought to himself, does this law of similars maybe apply somehow? So he was healthy, he didn't have malaria, he decided to take a little bit of quinine to see what would happen. Okay, so who's been paying attention? What happened? He got it, he didn't get malaria, but he got all of the symptoms of malaria. Yes, and so his genius went, well, isn't that interesting? So he was also a chemist, decided to go into his laboratory and come up with what he called the perfect dose. So what he was looking for was a dose that would make people better, but could do no harm to the physical body. Okay? So as I was researching for today, going through the internet, looking for some cute little jokes, I saw a cartoon that had a picture of a fellow, in a stretcher, clearly in a lot of pain in the hospital, and the doctor comes in with his x-ray and he says, well, the x-ray shows that you have a broken rib, but don't worry, we fixed it with Photoshop. Right? But it's funny because it's kind of true, isn't it? That's kind of what they do. I mean, they give you a drug that suppresses the pain, and that's, especially in the case of ribs, that's really all that they've got to do. So this is what Samuel Hahnemann said, I can't do this anymore, okay? All right, so let's talk about the perfect dose. Basically, what he found was that the more he diluted a substance, the more powerful it became. Now, it's not that it became more powerful because it was acting on the physical body. We tend to think this is all that there is, right? But it's not. So what he found was that these medications acted on the energy body. And we have an energy body. How do we know that? Because if I drop dead right now, there would be a difference between this and that, yeah? Okay, so whatever it is that's giving this body life so that I can speak and entertain and maybe do a little song and dance later, but no soft shoe because I've never been good at that. Whatever allows me to use my body to do that is what the homeopathic medicines is acting on. Does that make sense to you? So if you think of it this way, if you are treating purely this physical matter, then the more substance that you give, or the higher the milligrams, the more it's going to act on the physical body, right? But because we're not acting on the physical body, we're acting on that other energy body, the more diluted it is, the more it acts on the energy body. Does that make sense? Yeah? Good. Okay. It doesn't make sense to you? Okay, good. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to give you a little bit more, and then if it's not making sense, let me know, okay? Okay, so basically, how many people in this room saw the movie Avatar? All right, so some of you didn't, but you did. That's good. So basically, Avatar was a situation where human beings in the future went to this faraway planet. I think they had to go into stasis sleep for 3 years to get there. And they were mining some kind of precious metals from this planet. But this planet had a race of large blue beings that already lived there. And so they were trying to figure out how to interact with these people. And at the same time, they couldn't breathe or exist on the atmosphere, okay? And so what they came up with was the main character, basically, his brother had died, but he had the same DNA, and they had already grown one of these big blue bodies, and they created this ship that would interface. So this guy would go into this ship. By the way, he didn't have movement of his legs, so it was kind of the perfect job for him because he got to make this body work, right? So he would go into this kind of ship and control this blue body, and basically he became the blue body. So I watched that movie the first time, and I thought, is James Cameron onto something? Like, is this kind of the truth of us? It's a little bit more elegant, as Our Lady upstairs is realizing right now. We interface by going through the birthing process, taking on the DNA and such from, the mother and the father and all of that. But basically, that's kind of what we're talking about. We take on that form so that we can exist, breathe this atmosphere and interface with the people that were already here. This isn't in any book anywhere. This is just my own mind keeping me up late at night, but it helps me to understand how this process works. Is that making a little bit of sense? Yeah? Okay. So if you are operating one of those bodies, if your blue body gets hurt, it's going to need something physical like a cast or an anti-inflammatory or a bandage, right? Something very physical for the very physical body. But if the operator of the blue body gets hurt, it's not about the body, is it? So that operator needs some kind of medicine for him having come from another planet. Kind of makes sense? I'm not saying we're coming from another planet, but if you do believe in a higher power that we come from, that we incarnate into a physical body here, then we kind of come from somewhere, right? Yeah? I'm seeing some heads go, wow, this is not what I was expecting tonight at all. Thank you for that. That's right. There's the mystical part for you. I'm probably going to get thrown out of the CIHA now, which is the Canadian International Heilkunst Association. It's all supposed to be very scientific. Did that help to put it in a little bit more perspective for you? Okay, no problem. Well, you know what? We're going to play a little game right now, and perhaps this will help. So I need 2 volunteers, please. There's number 1. Where's number 2? I need 1 more volunteer. If I don't get a volunteer, I'm going to pick... Okay, great. Lorraine, right? Yes, and... Tamara. All right, thank you, ladies. Okay, so we are going to play Guess the Homeopathic Medicine game. Ooh.
Oh, are we playing against each other? I'm going to lose.
Yes, you are. You're playing against each other. Okay. You didn't study much homeopathy, did you? Okay, all right. Okay, so here we go. Everybody listen, because you might pick the gal you want to help, right? Okay, your patient comes in with a red, runny nose and runny eyes. He has a cold. The first homeopathic medicine you think of is A, Apis, made from the venom of a bee, will cause swelling and itching in a healthy person, but it will heal swelling and itching in somebody who has these symptoms. Or B, Pulsatilla, a plant that is known to be very weak-stemmed and constantly blown in every direction by the wind. So the homeopathic version is excellent for any symptoms that don't have a pattern and change all the time. C, Allium cepa, made from an onion. Healthy folks cut into an onion and their eyes and their noses begin to run, often very intensely. Conversely, a homeopathic dose of onion will cure those symptoms. So which one is it, A, B, or C, to cure the runny nose and the runny eyes, lady? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Yes, because you're playing the game.
I'll go with C.
You're going with C?
Sure.
C. You both win. They got it. Give them a round of applause. Did you guys get it too? And look, you each get a prize.
Oh, sweet.
Oh,
So I'm not affiliated with this company at all, but I love it. It's a new raw chocolate bar called Zimt that I found. There's only 3 or 4 ingredients, and you get a lovely little Quick Health Clinic fridge magnet on the back.
I get the magnet.
Enjoy. Thank you for helping me, ladies. All right, I have another question. Who else would like to play? Come on up. Yeah, now that they know there's prizes involved, eh? All right, and I need one more. Yes, because Linda, she knows it all. She's bobbing her head to everything. Excellent. Okay. You guys ready? Okay. So I need my other paper too. Okay, your best friend is pulling her hair out because her son is so hyper. What remedy might help? Coffee cruda. Made from coffee, high in caffeine, makes most people more alert and sometimes jittery. Students rely on it heavily to get through exams. The highly diluted version will calm people down. Or B, cocainum. Made from cocaine, which is an incredible stimulant to the nervous system. People high on cocaine feel they can do anything and they stay awake for hours at a time doing it. So a highly diluted dose given to someone with these high stimulated symptoms will calm them down. More on cocaine later. Or C, Tarantula hispanica, made from the living spider. A bite from this spider causes restlessness, excitement, impatience, mania, and rages, among other things. So a homeopathic dose of tarantula can cure such symptoms. A, B, C, or D, all of the above. Very good. Man, you guys are smart. Give them a round of applause. And there's your prize. So there's a difference between, thanks ladies, between classical homeopathy and Heilkunst homeopathy, which is what I practice. So classical homeopaths basically believe that there's one remedy at a time to cure everything that ails you. And we just don't believe that. Our lives are way too complicated. There are so many things going on for us at this point in time, and we're exposed to way more things than we ever were back in the Samuel Hannam and Uncle Sam's day, right? So sometimes, depending on the situation, we might take a combination of remedies like that and put them together if it seems warranted to do so. Okay, so good. That was excellent. Nice game playing. Nice game playing, ladies. Okay, back to the cocaine. Now, what's interesting about that is, you may not know this, but kids in our culture often are put on cocaine all the time, and it's actually called Ritalin. Okay, so kids that are diagnosed with hyperactivity and ADHD and that whole Campbell soup of letters are often put on Ritalin. So the interesting thing about that is, Ritalin is, in fact, a stimulant. It's legal cocaine, and they are actually treating these kids using the law of similars, but they don't know it. So it is kind of interesting, because if you ask them, well, why does it work? Why does it help these kids? They go, well, we don't know. We just know that it works, right? This is why it works, okay? So again, helps you understand why homeopathic dose of cocaine, which, by the way, is illegal in Canada. Health Canada says, no, you're not allowed to give anybody homeopathic cocaine. But it's very interesting, because Health Canada also went on the record to say, well, we don't believe there's anything in homeopathics. So which one is it? Right? Maybe Health Canada knows something they're not really willing to own up to. I don't know. But anyway, so that's a little something about cocaine. Okay, so yes, so this is where a thorough understanding of the case helps the discerning homeopath come up with the right remedy. And by the way, this is maybe a good time to tell you that hopefully everybody put their name in for a draw later. So whoever gets to win that gets a free acute consult with me. So it will be a 1-hour acute session, and so I suggest that you use it the next time you think you've got a cold or a flu or some kind of little accident happens or anything like that. That would be a good time to come in for a 1-hour acute. Usually an acute session is about 20 minutes, but because I've never met you before, it will be better for us to do it for an hour. Now, my initial consultation is 2 hours that we spend together because, again, like I said, we need a very thorough understanding, a thorough history so that we can know which remedies or which combination of remedies we would use to help you out. And so my initial appointments, I spend 2 hours with you, and then I spend anywhere between 2 and 4 more hours on your case and making the remedies. The remedies are always included in the cost of the consultation. The first one is $250 plus GST, so it's $260, $250. But tonight, if anyone wants to book that first appointment with me, it'll be at a 20% discount. Okay? All right, so what's the difference between homeopathy and Heilkunst homeopathy? So I did tell you already one of the differences, right, is that idea of the one remedy at one time versus maybe making an informed combination of remedies, okay? Heilkunst was actually Uncle Sam's original conception of a new medical system. He wrote a book called The Organon der Heilkunst. Any Germans in here? I said that horribly right. Der Organon der Heilkunst. Anyway, but after he died, for some reason the homeopaths kind of chopped off that Heilkunst portion and just stuck with the homeopathy portion. But homeopathy is the system, or is a system that's used in this entire whole system of heiling. So what does Heilkunst mean? Any ideas? Ooh, you're looking for a chocolate bar, aren't you? Well, there you go. Yeah, so, all right. So basically, it does mean to make whole, but our most favorite definition is salvation of the soul. And so hopefully for you in the back, that's starting to make a little bit more sense, right? When we were talking about the energy body, it's our soul spirit body, right? So that's why Heilkunst, salvation of the soul. We're freeing up all that energetic baggage that's keeping us from being who we are and causing symptoms in our body. So, Heilkunst is the whole system of medicine that Samuel Hahnemann's genius gifted to this planet. Homeopathy is part of the Heilkunst system of medicine. The best translation is salvation of the soul. If we go back to the avatar metaphor, we realize that there is a time and a place for physical medicine for our very physical body, like when there's been a car accident, for example. But mostly, disease does not happen in the physical body. It just produces symptoms there to get our attention. Why? Because we live in a physical world, right? Have chicken pox for a good 2 to 3 weeks before you ever get any symptoms of it. As soon as you are exposed to chicken pox, you have it. How do you know that you have chicken pox? Exactly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a clue, right? Yeah. And so it applies to everything. If I have a disease of grief in my soul spirit because my sister died back when I was 5 years old unexpectedly, right? That's going to stay with me for my whole lifetime until something takes it away. And until Samuel Hahnemann's genius, we didn't know how to get rid of these kinds of things. They just stayed with us, and you probably remember reading this in one of my first articles. It's kind of like carrying around energetic logs, right? So when we're born, look at Jacob over there. We're nice and healthy, and we're virtually free of all of this stuff. And then something happens. Maybe the birthing process was a little bit challenging and traumatic. Maybe there was some kind of a condition in the belly, and they decided they needed to give IV antibiotics after the birth. And then maybe there was an ear infection after that, some more antibiotics, and then a vaccination, right? So each one of these leaves behind its own set of energetic diseases. And in some cases, like the car accident, there can be 10 different diseases that are left behind. So we start out young and healthy and strong and vibrant like Jacob, but over time, we just can't carry all of these diseases anymore. And so it shows up as all of these symptoms, and that's why you get to approximately the age of 40, and they say it's all downhill from there, right? All it is, I don't believe in aging, but if you are encumbered by all of these things, right, they're going to aid you because they're showing up as physical symptoms in your physical body because your energy body's going, hey, we're in this world, but I need you to pay attention to me. I've got these problems going on that need to be dealt with. Talk therapy is wonderful. Psychology, psychiatry is a bit of a drug-pushing industry, but talk therapy is wonderful. But you know, I've treated several psychologists in my 6 years of practice, and they all tell me the dirty little secret is it doesn't really work. And the reason for that is it's because we're just talking about the same stuff, right? But we don't have any way of getting rid of it. And that's what this does. We talk about it, we figure out what it is, and then we have an actual system for getting rid of all the stuff that it left behind. So it's beautiful. The two systems can work really, really well together, as a matter of fact, okay? So that's what Heilkunst does. It kind of takes you on a journey back through time and gives you back yourself. Because each time, what we do is we give what we call a set of timeline powders. So once we've figured out your particular journey, with the particular shocks and traumas that have happened to you, we go backwards through time and we treat them in the reverse order that they happened. And every time you get through one of those healing crises, you are so much more yourself than you were before that. You think differently. The world responds to you differently. Life is so much different because you're not carrying all of this stuff around anymore. Is that making sense? Great, good. The other thing about the Heilkunst system of medicine is it's a very holistic system of medicine. So it encompasses everything. So when I do an initial consult with somebody, it takes 2 hours because I'm going through how much water are they drinking? What kind of water are they drinking? I'm going through what foods are they eating and are they designed to work for them or against them? Really, nobody teaches us this, right? Unfortunately, there isn't a handbook when we're born telling us how to do this. So that's a big part of Heilkunst as well. Okay, so let's just touch a little bit on the germ theory. And hopefully I'm not going to offend anybody. Do we have any nurses or doctors in the house? How are we doing so far? Okay, well, that's okay. So just, I won't mean to offend you. Okay, so let me say that right off the top. But the interesting thing about the germ theory is we've built an entire medical system around it. What did I call it again? Germ theory. That's an interesting word, isn't it? What does that mean? Not proven exactly who said that. Nice, very nice. So yes, yet we've built this whole medical system around it. Now, if you study Dr. Hammer's German New Medicine at all, he actually tells us that the existence of viruses, and this has been shown, it's not just Dr. Hammer that's saying it, the existence of viruses isn't proven. We assume because we can see antibodies that the body has created after that it's been exposed to a virus, but we can't actually prove the existence of the viruses. So that's kind of interesting to think about, especially when we're being given a lot of elbowing to go get our vaccinations, right? So that's kind of interesting. With regards to the germ theory, what I think is interesting about it is there was another fellow at the same time as Louis Pasteur. He's the one that's credited with giving us the germ theory. And basically the germ theory says that your body's going to be nice and healthy unless or until it gets intact or invaded by something like a virus or a fungus or a bacteria, and then it gets sick, okay? But there was another fellow at the same time in history. His name was Antoine Béchamp, and there used to be a free internet book called The Truth and Lies of Louis Pasteur, if you're interested in that. Béchamp was a contemporary of Louis Pasteur's, and he said, it's not that we get invaded by and large. Yeah, there is the odd thing like cholera that might come along and the population hasn't been exposed to it, but by and large, all these little things that happen to us on a regular basis, they're already in us, and some kind of exciting factor has to turn them on. So that's interesting when we think about what we've learned about Heilkunst and the shocks and traumas, right? So one of the things that we found empirically in the Heilkunst practice is if we look at, for example, a baby, right? Baby is born, they're nice and healthy, they're doing fine. If they're being nursed, they're getting all of those nutrients and immune system from the mother because babies don't have an immune system of their own. We don't really develop a mature immune system till the age of 4, which again makes me ask, then why are we vaccinating at 2 months and 4 months, et cetera? I don't know what that's all about. But so we have this baby, and then we give her her first vaccination. And then, all of a sudden, about maybe 2 weeks later, she's grouchy and tugging at her ear, and she's hot, and she's screaming in the middle of the night, and nobody's getting any sleep. Oi! So we take her to the doctor, and the doctor diagnoses a bacterial ear infection and gives what? Oh, you guys are good. Very good. I didn't bring enough chocolate bars. I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Antibiotics. So here's what's interesting about that. If what Béchamp said is true, and by the way, his theory was called the pleomorphic theory, which means shape-shifting. Any Star Trek fans in here? I'm a big Star Trek fan. Nice. Yeah, the shapeshifters. Yeah, the butler did this. Yes. Oh, and pause for Leonard Nimoy moment, shall we? Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, so the pleomorphic theory says that you give the vaccination, and now the baby's body has just been introduced to a whole bunch of stuff. So here's the interesting thing about vaccinations. The principle is sound. It's the principle of the law of similars, isn't it? Like cures like. The principle is sound. The way it's being applied is not sound, because we're actually injecting something into the baby's body, and it's not just the bacteria or the virus, but they're also putting things like adjuvants in there to get the immune system to really react. Again, most of them don't have an immune system yet, so that's kind of weird. But a lot of things like formaldehyde, mercury, aluminum, things that we probably shouldn't be putting into our bodies. So again, vaccines are a great idea. Maybe they need to work on the delivery of it a little bit. But anyway, so we give this baby a vaccination, and she's tugging on her ear and screaming. And she has all of these symptoms now. Well, what's happened? The body has actually had this assault on it, and it's a very wise, intelligent body that we've come into this world with, and it says, well, I need to do something about this. I'm going to cause a big inflammation, and oh, look at that. I've got these big canals on both sides of my head, so I'm going to use that, because that'll be really good for turfing it. Now, Béchamp said that we are made up of the tiniest living creatures. And never in real life, but always in movies, you see a movie about a funeral, and they always say ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? Well, this is what we break down into. And these are basically indestructible, these little things. He called them somatids, but they translate into the tiniest living creatures. And so he said that they all had a life cycle. And it goes from bacteria to virus to fungus. So somatid to bacteria to virus to fungus, back to somatid again, okay? So we get the injection. The body says, okay, this isn't good. Got to get rid of it. Going to cause inflammation. And I'm going to use that canal on the side of the head. So it says, hey, somatids in the ear canal, I need you to speed up to your bacteria phase, because there's going to be a lot of cellular die-off from all this heat I'm going to create. I need you to eat that so there isn't going to be gangrene in the body. So the body is actually trying to heal itself from this invasion that happened. Then we take the antibiotics, and the antibiotics are now actually eating part of the baby's body, isn't it? Yeah, so it's very suppressive, it's very anti, it's not anything. What it's doing is kind of pushing that little problem underneath the rug, and by the time that girl gets to be about 40 years old, it's going to be a really big problem. They just kind of piles up and piles up and piles up, okay? So that's the pleomorphic theory versus the germ theory. You decide which one makes more sense to you, okay? Any questions about that? Nope? Okay, good. He did. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for... Oh, what did that mean again? Oh, sorry. The butler just held up, yes. So I have a microphone. Margot, who is part of somebody who runs this center, couldn't be here tonight. And so we thought, oh, well, we'll put this up on the website, on my website. So you guys are going to be, getting your little things to fill out later. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so I need to repeat your question. So basically what you had said was that on Louis Pasteur's deathbed, he renounced the germ theory, right? Yeah, you are well informed. He absolutely did do that. And he said, I quote, Béchamp was right. Béchamp was right. He said that. Yeah. So thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. Yeah. And so while the germ theory has never been proven, the pleomorphic theory, they've actually built about 7 medical systems around it. One most famous one was by a man by the name of Royal Rife. And it was quite brilliant. He was curing cancer. He was curing all kinds of things. At that time, the American Medical Association, remember that very powerful union, was run by none other than tobacco giant Philip Morris, also not a medical doctor. And I don't know, maybe there was a conflict of interest. He made it his big goal in life to destroy this poor man, and he did. And he died penniless and drunk because they just absolutely destroyed him and his system. Yeah. So kind of interesting. Okay. Here's the big question on everybody's minds, though, right? Because we were advertising genes, right? Thought you were going to come here and learn all about genes, right? Why did Angelina Jolie get her breasts removed anyway? Does anybody know this story? Did you follow this in the news? Yeah? Her mother did die of breast cancer, yeah. And so then they came out with this test, and go get the test done and find out if you have the same genes, and if you do, get your breasts lopped off, and your chances of developing breast cancer will be much less. I mean, none of this is true. This is pseudoscience. They haven't been able to guarantee anybody that they won't get this breast cancer, but they can sell these wonderful little tests now, and they can make people really scared, right? The thing about genes is you can take 100 people from the same gene pool and expose them all to things like asbestos and first-hand and second-hand cigarette smoke, all kinds of things that are bad for the lungs, but maybe one or two of them or none of them will develop lung cancer. So how does that work, right? Maybe the whole gene thing isn't what we thought it was. Maybe we should just go buy some Calvin Kleins instead. Forget the whole gene thing. It turns out that the whole quest to map the human genome was actually kind of disappointing, and that a worm called the nematode worm has more genomes than humans. So that was a little embarrassing. The new science is called epigenetics. And basically what epigenetics does is it talks about the study of what makes a gene turn on certain proteins to create a specific situation. And it really comes down to what is the environment that the genes are being exposed to. So again, this comes back to what kinds of shocks and traumas have happened, how is this person being taken care of in infancy, how is this person taking care of themselves in their life, and are they dealing with all of this goo that's developing in their soul, spirit, body as they're going through time on this planet. Okay, so epigenetics is really, really interesting. Bruce Lipton wrote a book called, what's it called? The Biology of Belief, thank you. And he talked about how it was really hard for him because he had to stand as a professor in the university and teach the genes, all about the genes, but in fact he was doing studies on stem cells that was showing that what he was teaching was absolutely not true, that it was all about the environment that these stem cells were being raised in that determined which genes turned on what. So epigenetics is really fascinating. Genes is old news. Go buy some Calvin Kleins. All right, so now that I've explained the germ theory, how many of you believe in cold and flu season? Wow, you guys are good. You've been paying attention. Very nice. Basically, there is no such thing as cold and flu season. It's actually vitamin D deficiency season. Did you guys know that? How many people took your vitamin D today? Excellent. That's why you're here. You're smart. I don't need to teach you guys anything. So the average size adult needs 8,000 international units daily. How much did you take? Years. Well, if you're healthy, it's working for you. Good. Okay. So a belief in something gives it power for sure. And the cold and flu season is a really good example of that because we have the media bombarding us with, it's cold and flu season again. Make sure you buy this drug and get vaccinated and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, if any of you are curious, a lot of the flu vaccines that they're doing now, and I hate this, and I think we should all be against it. If you're going to Save on Foods to buy your groceries, and they're giving flu through the nose, they are potentially putting you at risk with that live virus for a couple of weeks. It really, we shouldn't be at risk of getting the flu just because we're buying groceries. So I think if you're concerned about it, call your store managers, tell them you don't want it happening anymore. Yeah, because they're doing it through the nose now. They're doing a nose spray. And so they will shed the virus for the next couple of weeks. Yeah. And this is largely what's happened in California with the outbreak of measles. There were two people who had just had the vaccine with the live virus. And people don't realize once they've been vaccinated with the live virus, they can shed it for even up to 6 weeks. So people who haven't been vaccinated because they've educated themselves and they decided to make that choice, yep, they're at risk for it. And then the media blows it into a big frenzy and scares all of us about it, right? So vaccines are actually causing some of this. And it's important for us to use our critical thinking. Yes? So the question was the flu vaccine that's given by needle, is there live virus in that? I believe that there can be. It just kind of depends which one that you get. They're trying to make, and something was just defeated last week, which was awesome. They got 100,000 signatures, but yeah. Yeah, exactly. Another fun fact about the flu virus is that, the flu vaccination, yes, is that one flu vaccination contains more mercury than an adult is supposed to be exposed to in their lifetime. How can this be good for us, right? It's really kind of crazy. And again, so that's why I'm encouraging everybody to use their critical thinking, right? Okay, so we talked about a belief and how beliefs basically can create disease as well, or a fear of something. How many times do you go into somebody's house and you find out they've got a cold or they sneezed on you? Oh my God, I'm going to be sick next week. And then you get sick, right? And so what happens is, did you catch something via the germ theory? Probably not. What happened was you got a little bit afraid. Maybe your immune system was a little bit low because you forgot to take your vitamin D or nobody told you should be taking it. Maybe you'd had a few sleepless nights. And then you developed that state of mind that said, oh my God, I'm going to get sick. And guess what? That's enough of an exciting factor, according to Antoine Béchamp, for your body to turn on that virus. And really why it turned it on is because you had a fear. So it's using the virus to eat that fear energy and try to get rid of it for you. Isn't that interesting? God bless our symptoms and our viruses and our bacteria. Now, crude nature, I do see you, one moment. Crude nature at its finest can be horrific. It actually can kill people, and it can be very, very uncomfortable, particularly for the parents of a baby with an ear infection in the middle of the night. And that's where homeopathy comes into play. We're not saying people should suffer, and you can use the law of similars and not have to suffer at all. So whoever wins that acute will learn that. Yes, your question is back? Oh, okay. Well, just interrupt me when it comes back. I apologize for that. Okay, so now we're going to get to the really exciting portion of this evening. All about the miasms, because we're talking about the genes. Here comes the butler. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you, darling. And I know most of you can't see this, and I apologize. I am technologically challenged. My son has come to record this for me because he is not technologically challenged. I did try to make copies of this by taking a picture of it and putting it on my printer and stuff. Didn't work. So this is mostly here to help me with my memory. It has nothing to do with you whatsoever. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is Serinum. And this is what Samuel Hahnemann called the mother of all diseases. So basically, what these are is our genetic baggage diseases. But remember, we talked about the genes. We talked about epigenetics. So this is about epigenetics. This is about you're born into a family, in the case of Serinum, that maybe your parents lived through the dirty 30s. There was not enough food. There was not enough anything, right? There was not enough money. And it was pretty dry. Even the soil was quite dry and barren at that time. So if you grew up with parents or grandparents that lived through that, for sure, they're going to pass that state of mind on to you. Or if you just grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, this is going to be something that you're going to carry around with you until your life force finally makes it so evident that you need to do something. And it could be that you're always broke, or it could be that you're always losing your job. It could be stuff like that. It could be physical symptoms as well, like being really, really cold all the time, or dry, itchy skin, psora, psorinum, so psoriasis and eczema often comes out of here. So I'm just itching to have more money or to be understood or heard or whatever, right? So again, with the epigenetics, it's the state of mind that we inherit and that we pass on. And we inherit it, and we also pass it on by our daily things that we do and things that we say, right? Think about the mom that says, don't go outside without your coat on or you'll catch your death. Oh, there's a good belief system for you to grow up with, right? All right, so the theme is lack, poverty, consciousness in this one. And so again, we talked about some of the ways that it can manifest. Excuse me, I'm just going to check my notes. Now, the miasms do have a yearly season. And so we're pointing right here. It's actually just started shifting. This is the season that we're in here in North America now. So we're coming out of Basilinum ringworm season, and we're moving into Metarhinum season in the spring. How do I know as a Heilkünstler whether you've got Metarhinum factoring in your family? Well, I know if you've got springtime allergies, or if your parents, one or two of your parents had a lot of springtime allergies. I know that's going to be part of it. But the theme of this one, you're going to love it, excess. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's Metarhinum. So Metarhinum is a really fancy word for, you know this, right? Don't remember? Do you remember? Gonorrhea. Gonorrhea. So not that I'm saying you come into my office and if there's a lot of excess in your life that I'm going to diagnose you with gonorrhea. But I am going to suggest that you're a North American, which means your ancestry probably comes from Europe. And at one time in Europe, lots and lots of people were affected with gonorrhea and syphilis. And so you don't have acute gonorrhea and acute syphilis, but the states of mind have been passed on from generation to generation to generation. You know in the Bible where it says the sins of the father shall be passed on for 7 generations? There's always a little grain of truth somewhere. So sin, actually in Old English, doesn't mean you were bad. It means, it's an archery term, you missed the mark. So you missed the mark in your thinking. So those are the sins that we pass on. Again, what are we raising these genes in? What's the environment that we're raising them in, right? So for Metarhinum, the theme is excess. And how it shows up is these kinds of people, you know, they're the ones that today, they're just crazy. They're partying all the time. They never get enough sleep. They're eating as much sugar and drinking as much coffee as they can to get through, and then they come and see me, and tomorrow everything's changed, and they're doing it perfectly by the book. And then about a month after that, they've found something else, and they've done another 180 or 360. So they're doing constantly extreme things, right? If a baby comes and the parents are complaining because this baby was fine, and then all of a sudden his nose starts running, there's all kinds of green stuff, he can't sleep at night, he's miserable, he will not respond to anything, his behavior is often, then we tend to think about this one as well. Behavior problems, violent temper tantrums, ADHD. A really big telltale sign is green stuff coming from the nose. That's a big one in this one. Carcinosin, right here. So this one everybody's usually kind of interested in because it's the one that has the state of mind for resignation. This is the way life is. It's how it'll always be. There's not really much I can do about it. And I want people to think of me as a nice person, so I'm just going to keep doing it the way it's always been done. So guess what that is, the disease that creates? I'm not saying that very well. What do you think that creates as symptoms for our body? What disease do you think it might create? Yes. Did that make sense for you? Yeah, it does. You know, you go to the funeral of somebody that's passed away from cancer and you hear things like, he was the nicest man. Why did it have to happen to him? He would give you the last crumb in his cupboard. And that's why. Because that is the state of mind. It's not about me. I'm going to do everything I can to take care of everybody else. And so that really is part of the journey of us being on this planet at this time, is becoming our true authentic self. And you know what? If you're doing what's truly right for you, it's going to be right for everybody else too. And so that's another beautiful thing that I get to witness all the time in my practice, is when we remove these false states of mind that people have, these energetic logs that they're carrying around, each time they become a little bit more of their true selves. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness. And they're not so easily doing this anymore. Okay? So that's kind of the miasms. And yes, there's syphilinum right there in the summer. And we see that the theme of syphilinum is destruction and self-destruction. So for instance, lots of the mental illness comes from this one. Hoarding is kind of interesting. We see that on television a lot now. So they say that hoarding doesn't respond to typical drugs for obsessive compulsive disorder, but it is a type of obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's interesting to me because it comes out of serenum, the hoarding, hanging on to, can't let go of, lack, poverty consciousness, right? It doesn't come out of syphilinum. It's not destructive so much as it is this. So that's kind of interesting how we see that differently in this system of medicine. Any questions about this? Kind of clear, kind of interesting? Yeah? Okay. All right, so we go through life raised with false beliefs. A few other ones are men are good for nothing and only after one thing, right? Finish everything on your plate because there are children starving who would love to finish that plate for you. Okay, good to know, thank you. So getting healthy involves tackling many layers at once. And now you know why Hal Kunst's best translation is. Do you remember it? Excellent, very good. Okay, and of course, we don't want to forget healthy regimen, right? That's a big part of it as well. So I always strive to get all of my patients off of wheat, right off the top. How many people are familiar with this concept? Maybe you've read Wheat Belly or The Grain Brain. Yeah, a few of you? Yeah. Wheat is hard. It's hard because it's like the staple that we've grown up with, and it's so wonderful and comforting on a bad day, right? But it is complete poison to your immune system. The wheat on this planet changed as of 1968. And you've probably heard of GMO, but it's not GMO. Wheat is not genetically modified yet. It's just been hybridized. So what that means is they took this strain over here and they took this strain over here and they said, it's so tall that if we get a big windstorm, yes? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. The question was, did I hear about the story that the Fifth Estate had on, I think it was last Sunday night or something, about wheat, presenting the opposite side and how these various organizations aren't supporting this whole idea. So we always have to ask, who's behind the organization, right? Our whole world is run by a handful of corporations. They run our pharmaceutical industry, they run our medical industry, they run our education industry, they run our food industry. And so they don't want people to be on board with this. Absolutely not. And there's lobbyists that go to politicians, and even though it's supposedly illegal, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of thousands of dollars if you support this bill, and so on. And that's how it goes in the States, but unfortunately we are very much that way too. The Fifth Estate is a CBC program. I used to have great respect for the CBC. I don't anymore, unfortunately. It's very clear. It's not freedom of speech anymore. As a matter of fact, I had a colleague who was approached for that very program, and they had lunch with the producer, and he was asked quite a number of questions, and he felt that he answered them beautifully, and he wasn't being pro or not, he was just presenting the facts, and they never got back in touch with him. So they never do actually present the other side. There was a show that was on recently, a different show, I think about homeopathy actually, and instead of interviewing somebody who knew what homeopathy was, they interviewed an energy medicine. I think it was on the radio, CBC radio, and it was on the whole vaccine thing. So even though my colleague wanted to be on this show and wanted to present a very clear sort of scientific other side of it, they didn't want that. Instead, they went with somebody who just practices energy medicine and made this person look like some kind of an idiot, never defined what the energy medicine was. So we're left kind of going, well, who was that person and why should I believe her? I mean, she just sounded like a flake, right? So we can manipulate things. So going back to the whole wheat thing, unfortunately, it is truth that they decided that we would all starve to death. I mean, that's the story. And so they had to bring the wheat from great big ones down to little ones. And so they went into the lab and they mixed this one with this one and that one with that one. And they liked that combination and this combination, so then they mixed them together, and so on and so on and so on. So the point is, our bodies have evolved at a certain rate on this planet, but the wheat did not. So it's something that's completely foreign to your body, and your body is creating an autoimmune attack against it. So for some people, they get migraines. For some people, they get a great big belly. For some people, they get cancer. For some people, they get acne. Some people, their hair falls out. It even causes Alzheimer's, and it causes schizophrenia. Yeah. So I encourage you to read those books. Don't believe me. Don't believe anything I've told you today. Please do your research. Send me emails if you have questions. Come to see me if you want to. Yeah. Okay. So wheat is a big one that I do get my patients off. And usually once they've been seeing me for a few months, I can tell which ones have not complied. All right. So I'm going to ask another couple of questions, and you guys can shout out the answers, okay? So which is a healthier breakfast? Steak and eggs, oatmeal, or a fruit salad with yogurt, bananas, pineapple, watermelon, grapes, etc.? Which one do you think it is? Terry got it first. Very good. Why, Terry? You know why? You're welcome. Yeah, because it's protein. Yeah, exactly. So the F word, do you know which F word I'm talking about? It's not a 4-letter word. It's a 3-letter word. Fat, very good, yes. So fat has been demonized, right? This is a very bad thing. It's not. It's completely a lie. We've been lied to about that. Gary Tobes wrote a wonderful book called, what was it called? Good Calories, Bad Calories. And he basically demonstrated how taking the fat out of our diets and replacing it with sugar and carbohydrate is largely why we have so many people that are very sick with type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer. Yeah, it's largely responsible for all of that. Fat does not raise your blood sugar. So if it doesn't raise your blood sugar, it doesn't cause inflammation. And inflammation is largely what's responsible for many of our diseases now. So fat is also very satiating, so you don't tend to eat a whole lot of it. And you feel full, and you feel pretty good for quite a few hours. When you eat bread or pasta or a bagel or cereal, start your day with cereal for breakfast, you jack up your blood sugar. First thing, your body has to deal with that all day long. And what happens is your pancreas will put out insulin, and it brings your blood sugar down, and then you feel like crap again. So you need more of the same thing, and you're on this carbo coaster all day long. And each time, you're creating a little bit more fat around the abdomen, because that's what insulin does. It's a fat storage hormone, okay? So yeah, steak and eggs. Now, of course, it would be depending on your blood type, too. Then we would kind of modify things a little bit. So you could have chicken instead of the steak, because the blood type A's don't thrive on red meat, but they do fine on the poultry and on the seafood. Lots of vegetables, always making sure you put lots of fat on your vegetables. Saturated fat isn't bad. The only fat that's bad is the kind that, imagine you're in the middle of the opera. By the way, I'm performing in an operetta on Saturday night if anybody's interested. So you're in the middle of an opera and there's a quiet moment and somebody opens up a package of candy, right? So anything that would make that kind of noise in the middle of the opera has got fat in it that you should not be eating. Is that clear? That's pretty easy, right? Donuts would also apply to that, I think, even though they'd be quiet at the opera. But your saturated fats that are connected to your animals, as long as the animals have been raised properly, this is not bad. This is how people lived for millennia. Okay? Yeah, so you could have chicken, you could have seafood, you could have things like chickpeas, more of your sort of vegetarian proteins as a blood type A, lots of vegetables, put lots of fat on the vegetables so you're uptaking the fat-soluble nutrients from them. Berries are really good as well for breakfast, for any time. The other fruits tend to be a little high in sugar, and some of us have to be quite cautious with that. But berries are very high in nutrition and quite low in sugar. Okay. All right, here's your next little question in the labyrinth of nutrition. What will be healthier at a coffee shop? This one's going to be easy for you now because I've given you the answer. But anyway, a soy latte, which is espresso with soy milk, a skinny latte, which is espresso with skim milk and sugar-free syrup, a breva, which is a latte made of 10% cream, or anything con panna, good luck finding that in Canada, which is made with whipped cream. Very good. But you already got a chocolate bar. Yeah, so now you know, right? So I just cringe when I am behind somebody who orders something skinny, because not only are they removing all of the fat so that all that's left in that skim milk now, by the way, the farmers used to throw that out, they called it garbage, and they have to actually add color to it to make it appealing because it's blue. And so all that's really left there now is the sugar that was in the milk. Every cup of milk is going to have 16 grams of sugar. It's called lactose. So you've removed all the fat, so the sugar goes boom, rings the bell, raises your blood sugar like that. And then on top of that, you've added a toxin. Did you guys know that aspartame, sucralose, and what's the other one? Saccharin? They were all created the same way, and that was that laboratories were trying to come up with a much better pesticide. That's right, a pesticide. And these laboratories generally are filled with people from all over the world that speak different languages, and they all have the same story. Somebody says, test it. The guy says, oh, I thought he said, taste it. And he goes, wow, it's super sweet. Ah! Suddenly a whole new marketing idea is born. These things never should have been approved for public consumption. As a matter of fact, the story with aspartame back in the day, about 27 years ago, when they first tried to get it approved, they couldn't. We actually had a real FDA working for the people back then. And the FDA said, there's no way we're approving this for humans to consume. They tried 4 times. The FDA said no 4 times. Finally, they got Donald Rumsfeld in the FDA. And he had lots of shares in Monsanto. Lo and behold, it got approved, and we've all been getting sick and falsely diagnosed with MS from it ever since. That's just one of the things that it does. Also destroys all those good bacteria in your gut because it's a pesticide, right? So all those good guy bacteria, we should each have about 5 pounds of them. It kills them. So does your genetically modified corn, by the way. So. Okay. Okay, one last question. You've just, because we're here. You've just confirmed that you're pregnant, and your OBGYN says you need to up your calcium intake. So you A, stop by the pharmacy for some calcium supplements. B, up your intake of milk, cream, cheese, and yogurt, etc. Or C, up your intake of green leafy vegetables. Oh, very good. Who said it first? That's my last chocolate bar, everybody. I must be right on time. Yes, so, and exactly, green leafy vegetables are full of calcium. Make sure you put your fat on them to get the fat-soluble nutrients. Nutrition always works much better when it's the way nature designed it. And actually, milk, cream, cheese, etc. is not a very good source of calcium. Yes, there's calcium in there, so they're not really lying to us, but it's a form of calcium that your body really can't metabolize, A, and B, in this country, it's illegal to drink it raw. And so they pasteurize it. And so it stops being something that's healthy, that your body knows what to do with, and becomes something foreign and acidic. So you remember the commercials? When you have an acid stomach, what do you take? Tums. Yes, that's right. Because what? It neutralizes acid. So if you're taking an acid in the form of dairy to bring up your calcium intake, your body goes, ooh, that's acid. I need to neutralize it. So it's robbing calcium from your bones to do so. This is why osteoporosis is such a big problem in North America. Okay? Yeah. Just a whole bunch of information you got tonight, right? Awesome. So some of the other things that you will learn when you start working with a Heilkunst physician is the blood type eating, as we talked about, healing glandular dysfunction. So many people have thyroid and or adrenal dysfunction. So learning how to eat maybe take some supplements to balance that out, get that fixed. There's homeopathic things we can do for that as well. Hydration, are you drinking the right amount of water for your weight? And are you drinking the right kind of water? Recreation, because fun is really, really important, and exercise, and even sex too. Yes, we'll talk about that as well. I'll even tell you how to do it the right way. Maybe, if you're lucky. Yeah, that's not legal. The CIHA would definitely kick me out. All right. Well, you all have been just wonderful. If there are any questions, let me know. But I remember my one little question over here about the HCG, and who had that one? That was you again, right? Basically, I can't get the homeopathic HCG in Canada anymore. I'm working on it. I'm hoping if you all want to pray to your Heilkunst gods, please do. But they won't allow it in Health Canada anymore. I think it's a fantastic way to quickly lose weight. Of course, I would much rather that people start eating for their glandular type, do their work, because with weight loss, it's kind of like cancer. If you cut it out, but don't deal with the underlying reason why it's there, it has to come back, right? And weight is exactly the same way. So it does very quickly help people to lose weight, and it does so in a safe way. Basically, it's a homeopathic version of the pregnancy hormone. So much pregnancy, generative, creative energy in here tonight, right? So what that particular hormone does, among other things, is immobilizes the stored fat in the body. So when you take a minuscule dose of that, pregnant women are exposed to up to 1 million units of it daily. So we give them between 125 and 150 units. So it's really a very small dose anyway, and they figured out how to make it homeopathic. So you give that to them combined with a very low calorie diet. The body thinks, oh my God, I'm pregnant and I have to go into my fat stores in order to feed the baby. So it just really does target stored fat as opposed to the fat that holds up the skin, like people who've done Bernstein, right? They look so old and saggy afterwards. And it doesn't steal from the muscles as well. So I'm a huge fan of it, and I've helped a lot of people with it, but I can't get any more of it, unfortunately. Yeah, I do. Yeah, basically, so the question is the guidelines for vitamin D. So by the way, guys, Mercola.com is an excellent reference, MERCOLA.com. He's a medical doctor who's gone from the dark side to the light side. Take him a little bit with a grain of salt because he can scare you a little bit. The whole world is scary, according to Mercola, but he's not bad. He does sell some things too. Some of it's fantastic, but don't be offended by that. Lots of really good information, lots of archived articles. So basically, the research that he's quoting from says the average size adult needs 8,000 units a day. Average tends to be 100 pounds. So a lot of us are going to need a little bit more than that, right? And particularly the more fat that we carry, the more vitamin D we need, because the fat cells are dynamic and very intelligent, and they know how great vitamin D is. It's called vitamin D, but it's actually a hormone. And there's over 300 receptor sites in your body for it. It's that important. So the fat cells go, hey, vitamin D, I'm taking it all. So then the body doesn't get it. So the more fat cells we carry, the more vitamin D that we need. Yeah, if you took 25,000 units a day, for 2 or 3 weeks, yes, you could become very toxic. Yeah, that used to be a huge concern. They used to fear vitamin D toxicity quite a bit, but the research just isn't adding up to that. Also, vitamin D, you want to make sure that it's D3, and eat your green leafy vegetables or take K2 with it to make sure your body's utilizing it. I don't recommend 25,000 units daily. I usually put my patients on 10 or 12,000 units, depending on what they weigh. And then as their weight comes down, we bring the dose down. And most people, you know, again, average size adults can keep it around 8,000. But here's the thing. If you go out in the sun, in direct sunlight, and we can get our vitamin D from the sun between April and September, if you go out in a bathing suit in direct sunlight for 20 minutes, you make 10,000 units. So how can 8,000 be bad? Health Canada says 400 to 800 units a day. Doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Hi. Great question. Am I going over time, Connie, or are we okay? You guys okay with the... So the question was, why do we start with the latest trauma and work our way backwards in Heilkunst? And what was the rest of it? And can you work on more than one trauma at a time? Thank you, good question. So we start with the latest one because that's the order of healing. And we might kind of confuse your life force if we didn't. Having said that, if there was a really big trauma or a cluster of traumas that happened, for example, let's say somebody comes into my clinic and they're getting migraines, okay? And I say, well, what was going on in your life when you first started getting migraines? And they say, oh, well, I had just divorced my husband and I was in a car accident. And that happened 20 years ago. Well, if I started with where they were now, quite likely we wouldn't get all that much success because there's such major disease states and trauma left from that event. So for sure, we would jump ahead, start there, and then come back to the future. Okay. Can you work on more than one at a time? No. Basically how it works is I'm giving you supportive droppers that are going to help with symptoms, that are going to strengthen you overall, that are going to start chipping away at the miasm picture that I'm seeing for you. But you get one timeline powder at a time. When you take it, it's acting for 3 to 6 weeks. So I usually don't give you any more until at least 3 weeks. Average is about 4 to 6 weeks though. Sometimes it will make sense to kind of ping pong things. For example, somebody has a major car accident and it happens in the spring and they were drunk. Well, probably Meteorinum is factoring. So I would give them the Meteorinum to take first, wait 5 minutes, and then they would actually take for the trauma of the car accident. Good questions. You guys are awesome. Really awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the participation, all of the awesome questions. You were wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.